we've been doing a lot of stuff, so hopefully this is very informative. Mary Beth is on as well. Ron Storm is on. Strum, sorry. And Chad Peterson is on. And did I see any other board members? If not, I know a few of them are missing, but ultimately what we're going to try and do with this is record it and also post it on Facebook. So if you have some neighbors or somebody else that couldn't attend, please direct them to that avenue. And we're hoping it's going to be pretty informative. And with that, I'll tee it up to Andy Johnson. Take care, Andy.
Thank you.
Andy, this is Margaret. Real quick, I think you need to hit record. Oh, it is recording. Never mind. It's totally recording. Okay.
Yep. Okay, thanks. So my name is Andy Johnson. I work with the Middle Fork Watershed District, along with John and Margaret. And we just kind of had contact with John earlier last year about trying to get a little questions he felt like just wanting to get for Lake Association, and we're always on board with just helping out with whatever we can with our lakes. And right now we have Russ, who's on. He's kind of started us off with a little bit on AIS. That's kind of been and everybody's main topic coming up here the past either 5 years or decade or whenever it's been around. And I will just pass it off to Russ here. And I don't think we really have a really hardcore plan with, like you if you want, you can have a comment to jump in. We'll try to keep a little bit towards the end of each session, but if you have something to bring up, just feel free to raise a hand, and we'll see how it goes. All right, so passing this on to Russ. It should just stay recording. All right, so I just made Russ the host.
Okay, we'll see. There, let's see. All right, my name's Russ Hilbert. I'm the Kandiyohi County AIS coordinator. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Just wanted to kind of give you guys a quick overview of just kind of the program and kind of what we've been doing and what we're gonna kind of planning for the future, and maybe some little identification if there's time at the end too. And if you have questions, just jump in and let me know. Infested lakes, these are the same ones that have been infested the past couple of years, so nothing's changed. Obviously, as most of you know, Elkhorn Lake is infested with zebra mussels and Eurasian water milfoil. But other than that, there's been no new infestations over the last couple of years. So fingers crossed to keep it that way as long as we can. So most of the AIS program is kind of geared towards watercraft inspections during the year. We generally start kind of mid-May and end in mid-September. For 2020, we had 20 inspectors working. 2 of them were just lead inspectors, so they would go around and check on the other inspectors as they're working, and then if time allows, they have time to do inspections on an access that happens to be open. Total of 12 lakes that we inspected in 2020, and a total of 19 accesses that we inspected. Ended up with just shy of 7,000 hours worked and just a little over 10,000 inspections with our staff for 2020. And of those, a little over 6,500 were on entering watercraft, with 144 violations found on those entering watercraft, which is fairly low, but it is still, obviously we're always going to find violations. So it's good that we're out there doing that and catching those people and having the opportunity to educate them on how to properly clean their boats and make sure they're ready before they come to the access. In addition to that, there was the 130 watercraft that arrived with the drain plug. And as you can see, it's a little under 2% of all watercraft. So that's pretty low, and that's actually pretty good for the state. So primary focus when we were scheduling people is kind of on the 10 busiest accesses in our county. I kind of based that off of the last few years of inspection data, just kind of basically seeing which accesses were the busiest, had the highest inspection rate. So for 2021, we're kind of planning about the same number of people, be about 20 to 24 staff. Just kind of depends on the mix of people you get, how many hours they want or not. So we have 2 decon units, so we kind of have enough staff to run both those, and still enough coverage for other accesses too. For 2021, we're kind of planning starting May 29th and ending September 15th. So it's about the same time frame every year. We generally don't start right after or right before fishing opener. Basically because a lot of our staff is either teachers in schools or students in school. So it's really hard to have enough staff to really do inspections that early in the year. In addition to that, it's really a strain on the budget. We have a lot of other items in the budget we're paying, so it's tough to make that money stretch further. So this is kind of just the inspections per hour from last year. Some were pretty busy and some not so much, and it all kind of depends on, you know, when you staff them and how often you staff them too. I think the Ness Lake is kind of an anomaly. I think 2020 in general was a little bit of an anomaly. Generally, Green Lake, the Salisbury Beach access is one of the top 2 busiest for us. And this past year, it just wasn't. So I'm not sure if what everybody was telling me that, you know, lakes were busier this year. I'm not sure if that was entirely accurate, because our actual inspection rate dropped on Salisbury Beach for 2020. So I'm not sure how accurate that is. And we staff that every day. So with 2 people, 2 shifts, every day. So another part of our program is the decontamination units. We did 183 of them decontaminations last year in 2020. In 2019, we did 140 and actually had 2 decontaminations units running in 2019. So we did go up a little, even with just 1 unit this year. We only had 1 unit running this year just at Salisbury Beach, just because of the pandemic. We weren't able to get our staff fully trained. So we had maybe about half of them that were trained to run that. So it made it difficult to have enough staff to do that. For 2021, we do plan to have both of them again. I think the DNR will be able to train us up, get everybody trained adequately so we can do that. So we'll have that one at Salisbury Beach all the time again. And then the second one, we'll try to rotate that around some. I think between Norway Lake, Diamond Lake, and Eagle Lake is kind of what I'm planning to do. Just to kind of move it around a little, give it a little different opportunity, and just see kind of where it works the best. It does take up a little bit of space, so you kind of have to have a big enough access to really place it at. So those 3 are kind of the better ones, and they're all currently infested, so it makes sense to put it there. And with the decontamination, it uses 140-degree water, and if you rinse for just 10 seconds, that kills all the AIS that could be there. And if there's something attached, that you can use the pressure wand and actually blast it off if it's stuck on the hull or something. Just want to remind lake associations of the 21-day dry rule. So if you have a boat lift or dock or raft or anything you get from somebody else that's been in another lake, it has to dry onshore for a minimum of 21 days before you put it in your lake. So Even if you do go through the decontamination unit, that really doesn't shorten that time period. You still have to keep it out of the water for at least 21 days. In addition to the inspections and decontaminations, we also have what's called the SENTRY units. These are those cameras at some of the accesses, and they play an audio message. We have 10 of those in operation in 2020, same amount for 2021. For 2020, they only found 3 potential violations, and they haven't found more than 4 in any single year. And I'm not aware of any citations that have ever been issued based on the camera footage. I think the biggest drawback on these is that they're just unable to catch any zebra mussels that are attached, or veligers that might be in a watercraft. Last year we had one situation where we had a person that was putting in, I think it was nearly like a dozen or so boat lifts, with several of them that had obvious zebra mussels coated on them, and nobody caught it. We review 3,000 videos, I think it's per month, on each camera, and the only reason we knew about it is because somebody saw them putting them in the lake and called me and let me know. So then I had to call the company that does the video review and ask them to review that time frame and look for that. So they did see them then when they reviewed it, but to me it's something they should be catching anyway. So right now we're not going to be purchasing anymore. The task force approved to continue using these in 2020. A lot of lake associations still feel that the audio message that plays out there is still valuable. So that's kind of the main reason we're still continuing to use them though. Our local grant program is something that Elkhorn Lake has been participating in the last couple of years. For 2020, there was it was almost $98,000 in grant requests, and we awarded a little over $48,000 to 9 lake associations and 2 of the educational programs, the Prairie Woods Environmental Learning Center and the S team. A little bit higher grant requests for 2021, and we'll be announcing those awards in January. And the task force actually meets tomorrow night, and that's on our agenda, and hopefully we get those amounts approved. And the Elkhorn request is for $3,000 for the treatment of the Eurasian water milfoil there.
That's matching funds, right, Russ?
Yeah, that is the request from the county funds. So we would provide the $3,000 if approved, and then Elkhorn would provide another match of $3,000.
Okay.
So and I think what we're proposing to the task force is that we approve 50%. So we would probably approve 1,500. So you'd only have to match 1,500 basically then, but it depends on, if you still want to do the same amount of work, then you're going to have to kick in more money. Our budget amount for the local grants is only $40,000, and obviously we have way more than 40,000 in requests, so we can't really afford to fully fund every request. So that's why we'll probably fund it about 50%.
Do you look at in that meeting? I'm speaking on behalf of the Lake Association right now, but we haven't used any funds the last 2 years. And in lieu of that, do you take that in consideration in the granting process?
No, we haven't taken that in consideration. I think the main reason we don't is because with the little over 48,000 that we awarded last year was still more than the 40,000 that we budgeted. So we always kind of run a little higher than the budget, just because we know there's other budget items where we probably come in under budget. So it all kind of comes out in the wash, but we're still over budget basically.
Right.
Some of the public education and awareness stuff that we do is the gas station ads you might see. There's pump toppers and ice boxes that advertise our decon hotline and location of the decon units. We also do some radio advertising. We run 3 ads a day on both AM and FM stations, just advertising the locations of those units. And then last year we also worked in a couple of just kind of educational ads. One was on zebra mussels, another one was on starry stonewort. Kind of rotated those in 25% of the time on that 3rd slot, just to kind of get more general AIS education out to the public rather than just focusing on where the units were. So, and then we also started using the Wilmer Community Access Channel some last year. It was totally free just to run a public service announcement. So I started doing that, and hope to kind of continue that for next year too. We also have an independent educator that goes into the Wilmer and New London Spicer 7th grade classes. This is the 2nd year we've used him, and this past year he educated a total of 425 students with a curriculum-based program. There are some areas in our program that can be improved. The use of the decontamination units. Like to see a little more than the 183. I think having 2 units next year will help that some, just being able to have both of them available. Hopefully we don't have any maintenance issues with them. That was kind of a problem 2 years ago. We had one that was shut down basically on 2 of the major holidays. So that really took away a lot of the decon availability. So, but a lot of that is done just through promoting of it just by the staff that's there, doing the recommending the decontaminations when the DNR data supports it, like on your ballast water and stuff. And then just every time it's required, just make sure you do it, and when somebody asks, just do it. Don't say, no, you don't really need it. You just just do it. So I think that should help to increase the amount of decontaminations we do. Then our inspection rate per hour, that can always improve. I think 2020 was a little lower than 2019. So I'd like to see that come up a little bit again. 2020, we started doing more targeted scheduling. So what we would do is have an inspector for 4 hours in the morning versus a full 6 or 7 hour shift. Just because it's either busier in the morning or busy in the evening. So we sometimes have somebody 4 hours in the morning and sometimes 4 hours in the evening, rather than that few hours in the afternoon where it's just really slow and doesn't really make sense to have somebody there. And the inspectors seem to like it too. So we're going to kind of expand on that more again in 2021. And then we're not going to have any shifts starting before 7 a.m. Just kind of take a look at the data from the last 5 years, and it is really slow from 6 to 7. So it really doesn't make sense to have somebody there that early. And I do have some future ideas on how to, continue to make the program better and do a few different things. One is kind of a boat cleaning station, just having something can be placed out for the season with maybe a grabber and a brush, just for boaters to use when they go in and out. I haven't built a prototype yet, but I've been talking to some of our staff about building something, and I kind of have an idea what I'm looking for, but we have to get a prototype built yet. Another idea I had was a kind of an online check-in and out system. There's something out there that we'd have to pay for, but I think we can certainly build it in-house, and it should be similar function. I don't certainly think every boater is going to be doing this all the time, but it's another tool out there, basically, another tool in the toolbox that we can use and help people that want to know go on there, and they can see how they're supposed to be cleaning the boat, where they're supposed to be checking, and then they can check that they've followed the steps, and should help people inspect their own boats and make sure everything's clean if they want. IT staff is currently working on a prototype for me, and as soon as they get that done, I can take a look at it and hopefully make it functional as soon as possible. So, and then some of the Wilmer Community Access Channel, we do have some videos that we can certainly run on there on AIS, and then we could, they could always shoot a video how to inspect and clean your boat. That's something I thought about doing, maybe have it run once in a while. So just some ideas, just kind of have a few more tools out there to fight the battle of AIS. These are just some common invasive species. Obviously the most common one I think right now is the zebra mussel. Most people know kind of how to identify it. It's got the stripes and kind of a zigzag pattern. It's got that flat edge on one side, so it'll stand up on edge. They're kind of a triangular shape. And then when the shells are closed, they form a straight line. The Eurasian water milfoil, sometimes people get that confused a lot with a lot of the native milfoil. The biggest difference is the number of leaflet pairs. So the Eurasian water milfoil will have 12 to 20 pairs. So it's a lot more than what's on your native milfoil. There's the 4 leaves per whorl. And then I think the other common thing is that it's limp when it's out of water, whereas some other native species are not limp. The leaves will just kind of hang right along the stem. Starry stonewort's kind of the one that a lot of people are worried about because it's so close to Kandiyohi County. It's basically right across our border in Stearns County and Lake Coronis. So we feel like there's a lot of risk there for our county of getting that. So how to identify it is that the branchlets are in whorls of 5 to 8, and then each branchlet is forked, typically with one section that's longer than the other. That's kind of the easiest way to identify it when it's not late in the season. It has those late in the season, it'll get those star-shaped bulbils at the base of the plant. Typically late August and into September, you can find those. And then you might see some more small orange spheres that are visible. And it can form some pretty dense mats, so it'll pretty much choke out a lake if it's present. So they put in a lot of work in Lake Coronis to manage it by the access there. They do a lot of cutting and then chemical treatment at the same time. I think it's twice a year they chemically treat it as well as the harvesting. So they do a lot of work just to keep it under control. So it's not something you really want to get in your lake. Curly leaf pondweed is something that's most people don't realize but it's fairly common in Minnesota. It's pretty pervasive. Nearly every lake already has it, but the DNR doesn't list it because it's pretty much everywhere already. It's basically nothing new for them. To identify that, it looks like a lot of the other like clasping pondweed basically, but the biggest difference is that the leaves don't clasp around the stem; they just attach to the stem. Whereas, clasping pondweed will wrap right around the stem, and the curly leaf will just attach to it. Typically, it comes up pretty early, and but it dies by midsummer too. That's kind of another way to identify it, along with the serrated edges right along the wavy edge. Another one we have in Minnesota is the spiny water flea. I think Mille Lacs has this. They're generally about 1/4 to 5/8 of an inch long, and they have those long spiny tails with 1 to 4 pairs of barbs. Makes it difficult for fish to ingest them. They tend to get caught in there, and the fish can't swallow them. So they also have a black eye spot. And then the last one I have here is the Chinese mystery snail. And I think most people would be surprised to know that we actually have this in our county already. It's up to 2 inches long, kind of a light to dark brown. And that little trapdoor covering, when it's dead, it's usually missing. So that's not a real good description of it, but I didn't see a number of whorls on it that was listed. But this past year, when we did our starry trek in August on Nest Lake East, I did find one of these. So it's around. It's another one of those species the DNRs doesn't list because they're tracking it, but it's not really classified as the same as like a zebra mussel or something, because it doesn't really take over the lake like that. I think the biggest problem with a lot of these invasive species is that they're more of a food chain interrupter. So they kind of take out some of the food for the other species, the native species that are there. And then as those, numbers go down because they can't find enough food, that affects the chain further up too, as you encounter that same kind of issue. So that's kind of all I have as far as a PowerPoint. Open to any questions you guys might have.
I have a question, Russ. This is Margaret Johnson. I'm just curious if you had mentioned those SENTRY units. There wasn't any citations issued based on the SENTRY unit review of the video, but were there any citations issued based on the 140 boats that came in with a violation through your inspector program?
No, because typically our inspection program is more of an education-based program. So if there's a violation, it's our opportunity to just educate that boater of what we found and how they can prevent that in the future. We don't refer people to to law enforcement right away. I think if we were to start doing that, our inspectors would have a lot tougher time out there at the access with getting people to either stop for them or submit to an inspection. So we try to be as friendly as possible with them. And I think a lot of people have really gotten to accept the inspectors out there and like the job that they're doing.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Russ. That was good. I know me spending a lot of time throughout my life growing up by Cedar Lake by Annandale. A couple years ago, they just had the Chinese snail. I noticed, and it was very different looking at the shore. There are very big snails, about 2 inches.
Nope.
So it was very interesting. Never seen them for about 35 years, and then all of a sudden, about 2 summers, there was a couple hundred of them around. So it was not as hurtful as zebra mussels when they get stepped on, though.
Yep.
All right. I didn't know where we wanted to go. I have just kind of a little bit on some basic watershed, what we do. I know John kind of had a little bit more in the watershed district. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, if you
Head
want
up with
to
that?
show me the host, I'll share my screen here.
Andy, I just sent the host to you.
Okay, I'll forward it.
A couple things I want to touch on are there's one hot issue of different water testing that's going on, and it sounds like Mary Beth had some. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the chemical name.
Arsenic.
Arsenic, yeah, that's not a good thing. So there's some arsenic and a bunch of tests showing up on the lake. I don't know if we can speak to that a little bit. I'm not sure how you guys even tie into that, but if you have any recommendations and where that may come from. Also, another topic is that we did the on the where the channel is, the DNR redid and the weir, I think is what Cindy called it, on the back end there. And we're kind of still wondering a lot about the past history of how that the management of the extra pond across be across the road in front of Brian Nelson's house, between Christensen's house back in there. Some history around that, and other history on the lake of who's owning what on some of these things, because when we had to replace that thing this year, it was kind of a question between, okay, is it the DNR's responsibility? Is it the county? Is it, and I think we worked through that, but it doesn't seem like the projects that are being initiated, it seems like everybody's kind of independently doing their own thing, and we would prefer that be shared so everybody knows what's going on, and including the Lake Association, so we kind of better understand what the plan is moving forward. So a little historical stuff and a little futuristic stuff we're looking for. And maybe as a side note, this grant that's being, that was approved for a lake study, watershed study, I don't know if that's going to answer a lot of the questions too. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit. So those are my hot topics anyway.
Yep. Nope. I have a little bit of some images and a little bit of the history around Elk Lake, just a little bit, and then that study that you just mentioned, the hydrology study coming up from Houston Engineering, that will hopefully be out in April, and I can discuss that a little bit after John sets off with his point, along with the arsenic possibly later on, which would be not my specialty, but a little brief on that. Yeah.
All right, so I'll share my screen here. Can you guys see that fine?
Not yet.
Can you see it now?
No.
Not yet.
Yeah, you're the host. Okay, now it's coming up.
All right, how about now?
Yep.
All right, very good. So going to start big picture here with the watershed as far as our major watersheds. So we are within the North Fork of the Crow River for our major watershed. So you can see that goes all the way up to Polk County. The Middle Fork is obviously within this major watershed. But just to give you guys a sort of big picture of, how we fit in within the landscape. Kandiyohi, a lot of it's within our watershed, but there's a good portion that's out. So just to see some of the other watersheds and organizations that work within our area, put this little bit together. We've got the Chippewa River Cooperative Partnership, Hawk Creek. They're no longer, oh no, they are, but the Crow River Organization of Water for the South Fork is no longer an organization anymore. So then we've got the Middle Fork there in yellow, and then the North Fork in pink. So just to give you guys an idea of other organizations that are doing work in our area within Kandiyohi County. So with just as far as the Middle Fork Crow River watershed goes, it encompasses 270 square miles. It's got Kandiyohi, Meeker, Pope, and Stearns. There are 137 miles of drainage and a bunch of wetlands. So just to sort of, many of you are probably familiar with the watershed, maybe a bit about watershed district, but watershed districts by far aren't the majority in our state. You can see the map here, we're circled in red. So there's a big cluster in the metro too, if you see the, I don't know if you can see that, but that's pretty much all covered in watershed districts. But yeah, there's a lot of area within Minnesota that isn't covered by a watershed district, one or another. But it's a special purpose unit of government, and it's established by a petition, and our watershed was established by a petition back when 23 was starting to get redone, and folks around were concerned about how it's going to proceed, how it's going to affect area lakes, and they're looking for some grant dollars to do a study to look at it and monitor that impact, and that's how the watershed district sort of came about. So really big picture here, surface water quality goals are swimmable, fishable. We want to, be able to enjoy our waters, get out there, fish them. And a lot of this came out of the Clean Water Act of 1972, but we are a ways off of that. 40% of Minnesota's lakes and streams are impaired for conventional pollutants. So just to give you guys an idea of what we look at as far as, and this is sort of where it can get tricky, regulated versus unregulated pollutants, sort of non-point source versus point source. And this is something that's really important when we're talking about shorelines and individuals, how they impact their water quality. So obviously regulated areas are industrial factories, sewage treatment, in some cases stormwater. When you're in a larger city, stormwater is regulated. It's called a MS4 size city. So they have regulated stormwater, whereas like the city that would be like Wilmer, whereas the New London, Spicer, their stormwater is not regulated. So unregulated, this is where it gets a little trickier. And there are some nuances to this, but by and far, agricultural lands are not regulated. Urban use, so oil, grease, things like that. Eroding stream banks. So this is something that I'll touch on later. It's regulated by our rules, but not necessarily by larger branching, overarching rules. The county does have some regulation around stream bank erosion as well, though. And then bacteria, septic systems kind of stuff. There is some regulation here as well, but it's not a very large overarching regulation that's uniform across the state. So when we think about variables that affect water quality and which variables that we actually have any influence over, we think about temperature, precipitation, watershed size, the depth of the lake, the surface area to water body ratio. So how much the ratio between the size of the watershed and the actual area of the lake has a big impact on how effective BMPs are within the lake. So say if you have a very large watershed, you're gonna have much less impact or much less efficacy when you're doing round the lake BMPs, whereas obviously if you have a smaller watershed, you just don't have that same impact far reaching around bringing possible pollutants to your lake. So population, land use, drainage patterns, and then the use of BMPs. So with all this, we do have to take into consideration where we are situated within the state, because lakes aren't just because of our topography, the geology. Lakes are different as you go from north to south, and you guys obviously probably experienced that going up to, Brainerd Lakes area where you got these really cold, clear lakes. Whereas if you go further south, you'll get potentially more turbid lakes, more eutrophic lakes. So that's actually organized into ecoregions. And you can see we're sort of, Kandiyohi is on the border there with the north central hardwood forests. And then, we're just on the northern end of that. So with the western corn belt plains to the south. So when we look at actual water quality data, we take this into consideration when we establish guidelines and standards. So I'm going to show you a series of a few graphs here, starting with a trophic state index. So this is when you hear eutrophic, oligotrophic, mesotrophic, I don't know, those may not mean as much to you, but I'm assuming many of you have heard the term eutrophic, and eutrophism is when a lake has more nutrients than it can ever do anything with. It cannot utilize all the nutrients in the lake for biological productivity. So this trophic state index takes into consideration the total phosphorus as one of the components, chlorophyll, and then Secchi readings. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Secchi readings, but a Secchi disc is a disc that we lower throughout the water column so that we can see how clear a lake is. And a great thing about the Secchi transparency readings is we've got data from that going very far back. So a large data set that we have to work with there. So with this, you can sort of see Elkhorn has, teetered into oligotrophy, but it's pretty solid within a mesotrophic state. So that's not a good or bad thing. It's just sort of where it is. Obviously for this area, we definitely want to see it being sort of a deep lake, cold water lake. We would like to see it stay within this mesotrophic level versus, starting to go up into the eutrophic, ultra eutrophic state. So,
Hey, John,
yep.
this is Leon Duchesne. Say, it looks like both Green and Elkhorn spiked this year. Is there something that you've noticed that has made that happen, or?
Yeah, so that's not this year's. 2019 would be the last year on the graph here. And
Okay.
2019 was a very wet year. Actually, 2018 and 2019 were pretty wet. So that's definitely has an impact on lakes. Well, some of the dip here with, it's sort of average out with it being the trophic state index. You'll see more of that impact from some of the like zebra mussels in Green Lake. You'll see some of that impact carry over in TSI just because of its use of the Secchi disc transparency in it. But yeah, by and far, I would say a lot of that has to do with increased precipitation. Does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah, I just noticed the trend was going up, so was wondering
Yep.
what was happening.
Yeah, but it's sort of, if you look at the average there, we're still, doing pretty well. It is, it's peaking up a bit, but I would imagine once I get the 2020 data, and it'll have come down a bit, and that's something that we have a report ready, and it'll come out to you guys pretty soon here. So here's total phosphorus. So total phosphorus is a very important nutrient in a lake to think about. It is by and far the limiting nutrient in most lakes. So when we have lots of phosphorus, there's a lot of productivity. There's high potential for eutrophism in a lake. So with it being a limiting nutrient, so say you just dump a whole bunch of phosphorus in, you've got enough sunlight, enough everything, space and whatnot, you will grow as much and more as long as there's phosphorus there to supply those plants with nutrients to grow. So that's a big thing that we need to think about as far as how that's introduced to the lakes or how it's not introduced to lakes, and I'll touch a little bit more on where we can come into that play as far as human activities. But there are also other sources such as internal loading of phosphorus, and that's some studies that we've done in the area, and we're working on understanding what component that internal load potentially plays in our lakes in the area. Any questions on phosphorus? Okay, I'll move on to chlorophyll A now. So chlorophyll A is a pigment found in green plants. So right here, this we're looking at it as a sort of a substitute for algae. So when we look at chlorophyll A, Elkhorn is well below the ecoregion limit. So not a very you know, a lot of algae production in Elkhorn. You can see also sort of George, Long, Green, Calhoun getting a little bit up there, but for sure George, Elkhorn, Green, Long too, very, very nice clear lakes for the most part. Whereas if you think of a eutrophic lake, obviously Nest has a much more production of algae, diamond as well. Any questions on chlorophyll A? Okay, we'll move on to Secchi disc. So this goes back to 2004 here, so a nice data set for Secchi reason. So if you look at this sort of, obviously the graph's upside down, but that's because Secchi readings are taken down. So you can see the lower the bars go, the more clarity you're experiencing with those readings in that lake. And like I was saying here, with green, you can definitely see the introduction of zebra mussels, the impact there that it had on clarity in the lake. That's not saying that that's a good thing. It's just part of their natural cycle that zebra mussels are filter feeders and they will essentially filter the lake. But at the same time, a zebra mussel will actually take in a lot of the beneficial algae, so some of the golden algae like diatoms, versus it will take in but eject, not really digest, some of the blue-green algae, the toxic algae, and when that, it's actually called pseudofeces, and that is that can settle to the bottom of lakes, and if it's stirred up, it's essentially just a supercharged form of phosphorus. So not making a case here for zebra mussels by any chance, any means. But again, Elkhorn, as far as clarity, you're well on the good side of clarity as far as Secchi disc readings. Any questions on Secchi? All right, so now sort of talk about BMPs. So with the Watershed District, we've worked on a number of different projects within our watershed. Some of these numbers are a little bit dated here, but what we're trying to do more now as we've matured as an organization, we're really looking at plans and trying to go about being best managed. So BMP's best management practices, they're practices that we put in the ground. They can take many different forms, but their aim is to improve water quality in one way, shape, form. So here you can see the city of Spicer, and a number of years ago, well, it was 2015, I believe, that we started this plan, and it's definitely paying, you know, it's doing well. So this it was called the Accelerated Implementation Study, and what we did was ran a program called P8. It's called the Program for Predicting Polluting Particle Passage Through Pits, Puddles, and Ponds. So it essentially will break up a watershed into smaller areas, and in those areas we assigned a land use value, precipitation data, any water quality data that we had from the area, and it's able to provide sort of a hotspot map as to where you're more than likely going to see pollutants, where it's more susceptible to pollution, and then what we did with that, we went and into those areas and took using a different program called HydroCAD and put in hypothetical projects, ran the program again, and saw what kind of reductions we would get with those projects, and then ranked them and looked at, okay, well, this is here we're going to get our most bang for our buck. So we're really treading away from the whole put a project in wherever you can, long as it's in the ground is a good thing. We understand that there's only so many dollars to go around, and we want to use those dollars wisely and so they have the most efficacy. So any questions on these studies? This is just one example. I feel like it's an easy example to sort of wrap your head around, but we're doing similar studies with water bodies as well, looking at the impacts, reassessing how any of those projects would work, and then moving forward that way. So a few of just some examples of projects that we do. So here are just tree trenches. This is more of a urban practice. You may have seen them actually if you're ever going through over by the Legion in London. Here is a picture of the master gardeners, the New London master gardeners there planting a tree trench. So a tree trench is essentially a stormwater best management practice that will, a lot of times there's going to be a cut in the curb of the street that diverts water into these trenches. And rather than that water going straight into our stormwater, and because storm sewer, obviously there's no treatment there, it goes right into our lakes and rivers. This intercepts that. It helps filter the water. The plants in the tree trenches, the tree actually uses some of the nutrients to grow, and then it also helps groundwater recharge versus just that water going full force straight into lakes and rivers. Can I see a show of hands? Anybody seen the tree trenches? Not too many? Okay, there we go. Chad's seen them. Yeah, well, if you're out there, take a look. They're pretty cool. So here's another one. This is so rain gardens, they can take many shapes, sizes, forms. This is another infiltration practice that people can use. And it's, I sort of want to preface rain gardens. It's a garden. It does take effort, but at the same time, they can be designed in many different ways. So obviously here you can see some pretty ornate rain gardens in these pictures, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the norm. The reason to sort of preface it like that is I don't want people to get the wrong idea of rain gardens thinking that they have to be a lot of work. They can be built in ways that are minimal maintenance. I said minimal, there's always going to be some amount of maintenance there, but they are a very effective practice around lakes to capture some of the water, say running off of your house or your patio, driveway, all that, and they can be really beautiful. They can be very functional, but they do require some work. So anybody have any question on rain gardens? Okay. So now we're going to go big project here. So for a number of years, the Watershed District had worked with the DNR, Ducks Unlimited on a large scale project over in the Diamond Lake watershed. So the Diamond Lake sub-watershed. We did what is called a total maximum daily load study on Diamond Lake and found that it was impaired for phosphorus. And a lot of that impairment for phosphorus came from a chain of lakes that's called Hubbard, Schultz, and Wheeler chain of lakes. So here you'll see Hubbard, Schultz, and Wheeler. So this is if you look here, the blue arrows show the natural path of water going through those lakes and into Diamond. And through the TMDL, that total maximum daily load study, it was found that a very large portion of the nutrients of the phosphorus that was entering Diamond Lake was coming from this sub-watershed coming through these lakes. So super eutrophic lakes, high phosphorus, high chlorophyll A in these lakes. So what we did was we worked with the DNR, Ducks Unlimited, Lessard Sams, got some funding going and made this into a shallow lake drawdown project. So we had to somehow drain these lakes to draw down the lakes. So when you think of a prairie, a lot of times people understand that fires are a natural part of prairie health, prairie succession. That is the same thing with wetlands. So wetlands in the past have not been as connected, or sorry, wetlands had been able to be drained. They would go through periods of drought where they would drain down there, where they would dry up. But now they are more connected because of as much tiling as the artificial drainage that we've put into our landscape. They don't really, they're never able to really dry down, really to go through that cycle of drying up and consolidation of sediments and sort of that natural process that helps wetlands stay healthy. So that's that was the idea here, is that we draw down this chain of lakes. So now you can see the blue arrows are facing the other directions. We sort of, if you look at the sort of Schultz Lake, the northern part of this map here, the star and that orange line, that was sort of the Grand Canyon of the area for a while. It was a big cut in the ground there so that we could get down to an elevation where we could draw these lakes down. And that water was then put into County Ditch 28 and went into the Middle Fork Crow River. There are structures at each one of these stars, and those are still there, and we're there for as long as we need them as far as future management of these lakes. So any question on that Hubbard Schultz Wheeler project? All right, just a few more slides here. So permitting, another thing, just wanted to put it out there. There are erosion permits that are necessary in our area, stormwater as well. And then vegetation. So if you look here, this is sort of getting more towards what can you guys do as lakeshore owners. The picture on the right here, you can see it looks like a very manicured lawn, but that isn't necessarily the ideal as far as lake health. What we want to see more is rushes. With rushes and areas like this, they act as, so you think of sources and sinks. Where are some of the sources for phosphorus? Where are the sinks for phosphorus? So obviously a manicured lawn like this is going to need fertilizer. It's going to be mowed. It's going to have water coming all across it, carrying potentially soil. That would be a source. Whereas rushes, areas like that, those act as sinks. So as people probably, you guys have probably all walked through some rushes and felt the mucky bottom, an area like that. Well, that's phosphorus. That's a sink of phosphorus, and that's where your lake can safely store phosphorus, and those rushes can use that. So native vegetation is very important in that battle against phosphorus, I guess you could say. Here's just another diagram of some of the ideas as far as vegetation, how they impact your land, how they impact your water. One thing that I really try to emphasize with people when I'm talking about water quality is we're not aquatic species, we're terrestrial species. So our impact on water happens through how we interact with the land. A lot of, especially with students that I'm talking to, they're like, oh, we're going to go clean up the lake. We're going to go pick up garbage in the lake. Whereas what I really try to emphasize is the way we interact with the land is really how we're going to be taking care of our waters and keeping them clean and healthy for everybody. So little picture of some native grasses there. You can see the Kentucky bluegrass. Doesn't have much of a root structure, whereas switchgrass, prairie grass, or prairie cordgrass, even blazing stars, those have these nice big root systems, and those are the kinds of vegetation that we're really encouraging people to have along their shores, specifically because of that root structure and the ability of that to hold soil in place and really provide a natural stabilization to shorelines versus just going and riprapping. Riprap is not a good alternative. It's not healthy for your lake. There is, I understand areas where you have extreme erosion and whatnot, and with the proper guidance, it can be used, but it should not be the norm. Riprap doesn't do your lakes any justice. It doesn't provide habitat, and it actually contributes to warming of your lake as well. So any question on those last two slides, the shoreline stuff and just some of the native vegetation? I have a few more pictures, just some ideas as far as what a native shoreline looks like versus shorelines that are experiencing erosion. Here you can see this one definitely, it needs some work, but yeah. So we also
can I ask a question? Is it
Yep.
possible to do like a combination? Like I live on the channel and I was walking down there just even like 2 weeks ago, and I'm losing just a ton of shore into the lake. Like I'm looking at going, I might have to, I don't want to because it's expensive, but I probably am going to have to rip wrap a huge section of it. So, there's a hill up above it, trees, all this sort of thing, but is it possible to combine buffer zones with riprap, or are you saying it's
No, and it can be used in conjunction with native plantings when if there is definitely an area where you're going to have a lot of flow, that riprap can be used. Jared, if you'd like, I would be more than happy to meet you out on your property and we can look at it a bit, and we can come up with a game plan. We're here for you guys for sure. So I really appreciate you asking that question. Is, does it have to be this way? Are there, is there a happy medium? And absolutely, there's, it's a dynamic thing. So even we've used riprap in a way that's called vegetated riprap. And it's some riprap, but then you're actually seeding into the riprap as well. So it's not just this total hard scape.
rocks?
There is some vegetation incorporated into that, but there's other materials as well. Courier logs are one of the things that we've used in the past with shoreline restorations, and they just provide a little more substantial thing for the vegetation to anchor into, but they will able to deteriorate over time and be incorporated into the shoreline, into the bank, and not be this thing that just provides no habitat. But yeah, I'd be happy to meet you out and take a look at your area there.
Yeah, I'd enjoy that. That'd be good. So do most people just do riprap because like it's easy, construction people know how to do it, but all of this other type of stuff is like how do you even do?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's an easy thing to do. And you're right, the construction around here, the contractors, they know how to do it, and they will quote you on it and be like, yeah, this will fix your problem. And even with riprap, a lot of the force from those waves wraps around those rocks, and you're still experiencing erosion behind that riprap. So it's it's not the total solution that is sometimes billed as. So but yeah, it's just sort of sadly become a bit of a norm, and we're trying to shift that for sure, through education, through demonstration projects, and through things like this where we can really talk with you guys and offer our help and sort of show their the success stories and how it can be avoided. So
Okay, yeah, I'll shoot you an email and we'll set up a time. Have you come out and look at it and see what you think.
Great. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Anybody else on riprap or shoreline? Cindy?
Yes. We're kind of across from Jared and we're having a lot of erosion as
Okay.
well. So if you guys meet, maybe either Guy or I can meet with you guys and make sort of a plan.
Yeah,
We've lost
absolutely.
a lot of shoreline.
Yep. And Guy did a lot of monitoring for us back in the day, and we appreciated him working with us. And yeah, I'd be happy to meet you and Guy out there, and Jared as well. So we can get an email together. I believe I still have Guy's email, so we can connect as well. Thank you. Awesome. All right, here's just a few of the education things that happened. Obviously, this year was a little different, but got a Clean Up the Crow event that we love people to participate in. And then there's also a great paddle event where we get people out paddling. This is sort of now more of the run through Prairie Woods Environmental Learning Center. Another cool education thing that's got a lot of potential for stormwater is adopt a drain. So people can actually go and adopt storm drains in the area. And like I said before, why we have tree trenches is because that stormwater, once it hits that storm drain, goes right into our lakes and rivers. So if we're able to keep the roads clean, the areas around the storm drains themselves clean, that's just less pollutants, less debris going into our lakes. So and that's it. So if you guys have any last questions, Andy's going to get into some more of the nitty gritty as far as what he's seen when looking at some analysis of Elkhorn. And as far as arsenic and that stuff, we'll definitely get to those questions as well. But I want to give Andy a chance to show his stuff, and we'll get to those questions as well that John had asked earlier. So.
Say, John.
Yep.
You spoke about watersheds, and Elkhorn is a watershed in and of itself within the Crow River watershed. How big is the watershed that I think we're at kind of at the top of the watershed? How many acres feed Elkhorn? So
I'm gonna let Andy, he's got some pretty cool maps that'll really help you wrap your head around that. And that'll be better than me explaining it just using words if you just look at the maps here. So I'll give it to Andy here.
Say, John.
Thanks, John. Those are, it's a lot. At the end of the day, there'll be a lot of answers that'll probably be, or a lot of questions that might be answered, and there'll probably be, when you go to bed or wake up in the morning, a couple more questions that you'll wish you would have answered. Let's see if I can share my screen here. I'm now the host. You'll start.
You should be the host now, Andy.
Okay, does anybody see this?
Yep.
All right. So I do a lot of kind of online computer modeling, I guess we'll say, in land analysis, looking at, anywhere from a very large watershed. We're talking about the whole North Fork Crow, which is I think it's 1.4 million acres, to something more smaller, and that's called the Huck 8, and I'll get into that. Something more like the Middle Fork area, which is about 270 square miles or 280 square miles. And we'll kind of break it down. I'll kind of explain a little bit to you of the different watersheds and the sizes and the regions and the basins. And I'm just going to kind of slide through this here. So this is just a couple little quick facts about Elkhorn. Some of these you may already know, obviously. surface area is about 80 acres for the lake area of Elkhorn, with a subwatershed of about 16,000 acres. I know that was just a question I was kind of briefly asked. Maximum depth is about 40 feet, 41 feet at a maximum, and there are 2 upstream lakes feeding into Elkhorn's small subwatershed area, and that would be Gina and Thompson Lake. Now, as far as if you can see here, it might be a little small, but this here in the bottom right is a picture of the area of the Middle Fork watershed district boundary, which is called a Huck 10, which I'll get into that. There's a little blue dot here, right as Elkhorn, so you can kind of see the boundary where that is. So if I'll get here, just basically, if you can see this in the basic watershed boundary diagram here, in general, there's different, I mentioned before, the number for a Huck is called the hydrologic unit code. It's kind of we'll just call it like a zip code, kind of like of the watershed. Every size has a different level, and then the digits attached to it, and those digits help explain of where it is. So you can see this diagram here. It starts out very big, and we have a region. So the whole region coming here is called the Upper Mississippi region, and its code is 07. Now it's a very big area for the watershed. So all the water, which for rain and snow and everything, will flow, collect in one point and flow down, and has a pour point. So you're not going to get water from the Missouri region flowing into the Upper Mississippi region because of the boundaries and topography of the land. So breaking it down into a smaller size, because we know our watershed is not the big where you guys live, into a subregion, and that is called the Mississippi headwaters here, and that adds 2 more digits to it to be 2 to the original 07, be 071. I'll kind of drop that, and then in here you can see there's kind of an orange, cream color, and a pink. Well, that is broken down again into a basin size. So coming on to the left here, we have a basin of that, which is the Upper Mississippi Crow Run. You can see in here is also again broken down smaller and smaller in sizes. And the yellow here, which is showing, is the actual North Fork Crow Huck 8, which is this size watershed area. Going down even further, we see down here in the North Fork Crow is the blue here, and this is the Middle Fork Crow Watershed District, which is called a Huck 10. That's actually getting more into a the term of watershed size right there. They kind of have an average size in square miles, which is about 227 miles here. This have for average. That's pretty close. Ours is just a tad bit bigger in the Middle Fork. Breaking the Middle Fork down here in green, if you can see my cursor, down even smaller. Now we're going into the Huck 12 size, and there are actually 10 Huck 12 subwatersheds in the Middle Fork Grover Watershed District boundary. We have up here the headwaters of Middle Fork Crow is in 01. I don't know if this is too small for everybody.
That's fine.
Okay. We have one up here. It's called County Ditch number B6. Number 3 here is County Ditch number 37. Number 4 is actually called Mud Lake of the Middle Fork Crow River. And then number 5 is a Nest Lake. Number 7 here is Calhoun. Number 6 is the Green Lake, which is the area where Elkhorn resides in. We have number 8 here is Diamond. We have this 9 here is County Ditch number 47. And then we have number 10, which is the Middle Fork Crow River. So this here, it's not on here. All the water, which the rain, the snow, all the flowing, the lakes, the wetlands, everything will come in here, and it drains right here in the bottom, the number 10, the Middle Fork Crow River, and it drains into the North Fork. Now again, you can go down even further here. This is the Huck 12 of the Green Lake, and you can see, well, you know that not all the water within this area flows into Elkhorn, and you can keep breaking down in smaller and smaller hucks until you kind of get just more catchments, like pretty small area catchments. Of course, everything can be broken down further. You know, the water the rain falling on your roof on one direction flows one side and the other side flows the other side, you can kind of consider even like one area of your roof a small typical watershed, though eventually the water will flow into larger and larger areas. This here is kind of maybe a lot going on in this picture. Obviously, we show the city of Spicer. The green here is actually a lake, and kind of the water flow, the water flowing into Green Lake. This red dot up here is a pour point coming from Nest Lake, and the Middle Fork will continue to go on. And here is the other pour point for all the water flowing within this Green Lake Huck 12 outside of the area onto, and keeps going down into Middle Fork River. Coming down on the bottom here is the more smaller catchment area for Elkhorn. Elkhorn is considered here in purple, and they'll break it down even further, even further. So this is getting more, pretty much breaking it down to really small. We can get smaller catchment of these for sure, but this is kind of the smaller size that you're going to get from the basic modeling that we can do. And so here, these are the catchments from Gina and Thompson Lake. You can kind of see if the little blue lines here are flowing, the water's flowing into Elkhorn. This is just basic. You know, you live around the area, you know that there's water that comes from more places than just this line, and flow is getting pretty basic right now. And have each one of these broken into acre sizes. Totaling about 1,600 acres is about the general approximate area where water flowing across the land through culverts, through the lake, through wetlands, and into Elkhorn, affecting the lake level. So I can even break it down, some things much smaller, and we can now with some programs start to analyze, you know, how much water might be flowing to each areas. We can have how much the types of soil, the types of land productivity between what's going on there, the housing development, the topography, everything will have an effect of the hydrology leading to a water body, and then how that water body will respond with the area and the landscape from it. This kind of moves on this a little fast. So here, I'll just go through and break just a couple of these down. We pretty much have three main sections going into Elkhorn Lake. And there is something called the Stream Power Index, which is the measure of the erosive power of water and the flow that's calculated over the landscape. I don't know if you can still see this, get a little bit here. So we're gonna have a bunch of lines. I put these black arrows in to try to help explain of where the water is gonna go. These lines are not exact measurements. This is just a basic model of it. I'm not saying that water falling over here is an impossible, that's not going across this boundary. That can be figured out. It's pretty much takes more in-depth modeling, and really getting your feet on the ground and looking at the layout of the land is pretty much the number one for sure way to really see what's going on. There is mostly up in this area, you can see is farm production land. There are actually a number of pretty good watersheds, wetlands that capture and help filter out the water before it gets to the lake, which is a definite plus for those as long as they're not having a big phosphorus sink to them, phosphorus release. Going on here, we got one more. This is just a pour point. So pretty much all the water from the previous slide of that catchment will flow into this area, which is, as far as catchments to going to a lake, is really pretty good. There are some water bodies and wetlands to help filter out the nutrients and help retain that water, so you don't have as much of a lake bounce. If these lakes and wetlands weren't here and the water was just flowing straight into the Elkhorn Lake without some little sinks to help slow down and capture the water, the dramatic rise and fall of a lake would be much more dramatic than it currently would be, which no one would really be happy about. because that does have an effect on the shoreline, which we've heard and I know you've seen before. There's another pour point here in this red dot, and that will just go on. Then this next page. So this here is, again, this is showing pretty much the last catchment going into Elk Lake before it gets there. And so with these kind of proposed boundaries, you know, most of these are pretty much how the layout of the land is. They don't follow political lines. Someone doesn't draw this up in a township and saying this is the line, this is where it's going to go. This is pretty much just how the natural flow of process goes. That does not mean that when we construct our roads, we don't sever and put a cut line in there. If we don't put a culvert, we can't filter out water from a different area to another or force water from another. We're always kind of like to be digging and messing with things for our own purposes, to further ourselves with how we move. And there are a couple of things, lots of things that you cannot see that are underground, such as tile lines, like I mentioned, culverts. And I think that there might even be underground culvert going over this field, just pretty much right into this area, which does affect the flow and the bounce of the water and hydrology. This is going to be further broken down and studied even more with the hydrology study that our engineering firm, Houston Engineering, is working on right now. They have been out and they've taken some measurements. They've got some data. They're doing more in-depth modeling and processing of the modeling than what I look at. And their report hopefully should be out in April, of which we'll have to get back at a time versus just Lake Association meeting or just a meeting, you know, however we get to kind of go over some of the data with that. So the area, as I mentioned before, is like most area around the Midwest, is heavily influenced by our production around the land, and that is mostly ag. Obviously, there is, like I say, there are a bunch of these blue lines here are the wetlands, which are helping really greatly to filter out nutrients and sediment that may come in from the overland flow. They really help to store the water, and they are great ecosystem services providers for all the species around the area, and they greatly benefit the water quality that will go into Elkhorn Lake here. This was mentioned, I know John touched on this a little bit before, about the water quality for Elkhorn in the Trophic State Index. It's just kind of a little graph showing the Trophic State Index of what is on the PCA's website. Actually, the mesotrophic state is really pretty good. Is pretty much about the amount of nutrient richness that you can get. The more nutrient richness you can get of water, you can have, we'll say, more food for possibly, you know, fish, if you like to go fishing, the species that they eat, which is great, but it can also get more nutrient richness for the algae and the stuff, which you don't kind of want. So you always kind of want to find balance, and Elkhorn actually is a pretty good balance and a pretty clear lake. We have a phosphorus total in parts per billion of 16 right here on a 10-year average. And the impairment limit for the standard in this ecoregion of Minnesota is actually 40. So that is a really pretty good number for phosphorus, what you have of what most lakes would want. There are quite a few lakes impaired for phosphorus. It's pretty much one of the #1 impairments of lakes besides mercury, which isn't really, it's counted on a list, but there's not much you can really do for mercury impairments. It's pretty widespread from that. The transparency meter, let's see if I can go up. I have here Lake Arteria. This was kind of touched on a little bit by John. I'll just go up. There's a little conclusion on this report. again, this might not be of any new information to you. I touched on a little bit earlier about 1,600 acres for the surface area of about 80 acres of the water, give or take the River Pond and what's counted with a max depth of 40 feet. You do have the catchments of Gina Lake with the ID here, which being about 48 acres, and Thompson Lake being about 43, but both positioned above the lake and do a good job of helping to filter any nutrients and sediment that may be brought into it. I'll just put up a couple images real quick. This is just also a little bit was touched on earlier. This is kind of just, I guess we'll say the ideal picture when you get into shoreline and vegetation. You can greatly change for not only the amount of water flowing down through the root system and into the lake for clarity, but also the temperature of the water. The colder the water is, the more oxygen it holds. And the more oxygen is needed for helping when things will be decomposing in the water, they really need that oxygen to for its decomposition function, and more oxygen in the water with cooler waters will help with reducing the amount of algae. And it's kind of hard to show in this picture, but you may see just the tiny little line right above this here, and that's kind of, this will say a typical lawn, which we all have. And the root systems of the typical lawns really are not that deep. Pretty much a rule of thumb you think of is the longer a blade of vegetation, take for a blade of grass, the longer the grass is, the longer the roots are going to be. And so when we keep kind of having our roots, our grass, mowed constantly for what we all do, the roots aren't going to be able to have as much nutrients to grow down deeper to really grab onto what they need to grow, because they're going to spend so much of their nutrients trying to grow their grass blades out taller so they can get more photosynthesis. That's what they need it for. So even possibly having grass a couple inches longer, say even 2 inches longer, might make your roots a little bit deeper, which will be going on farther to pick up that nitrogen, that phosphorus, that potassium will be a little bit less needed for fertilizer. One of this picture I showed earlier, a great thing to have is a mow line, to kind of have a line where it's not going straight all the way up into the upland in the lake bank for vegetation. It is can create a great natural filter. You can have areas, you kind of need a perfect medium. It's not like you don't want to get to your lake. Some areas where you can go and have your fun zone, and some areas where you can just go have your natural zone. It's kind of a perfect balance that everybody's kind of, again, in the ideal big picture of what we're looking at here. This insert here, education thing, was just put out by a mailing we had from a study for a nest in Diamond Lake, and we kind of made it up. They go with every lake. Obviously, not every lake is the same. There's different photography of the lake. The shorelines are different. The water levels are different, and the balance of every lake is different. So I'm not saying that this is exactly what everybody needs to be doing or works from that area, but just the general concepts of what goes on are kind of more the ideal big picture. We got, again, I can't stress enough on the root zone for plants. Okay. I know this was mentioned before about phosphorus being the limiting factor in this barrel here. Is called Liebig's law, is kind of how it shows. So pretty much every slat in this barrel is either micro or macronutrients that plants or animals will need, and phosphorus is the limiting one. So kind of say the yield is holding it back by this slat being lower. So if all the water's say falling out of this barrel, we'll do the reference of the water being its nutrients. If this slat is raising, say the amount of phosphorus is raising, then the amount of nutrients be held up higher in this barrel because the other slats already up there, for instance, potassium, nitrogen, are already there and available in enough limit to keep it going. I mentioned that one. There was a survey that I mentioned we sent out to a couple of lakes earlier with a grant, and I thought it was interesting. Went over one of asked a couple of questions, of how long have most people lived around a lake? Most people said, I've lived around a lake quite a few many years, maybe 40 or 50 years. I spent most of my life either for recreation, we had a cabin, we had friends, we just went on for holidays, spent a lot of time in the water. In Minnesota, we really like to enjoy our water. And a lot of those people also ended up not only using the lakes, but living in the lakes just as long. And so the question we also had was, what do you think are the most important lake-related actions for water quality advocacy? I had them rated on a scale of 1 to 5. And most people had a good idea of what they thought affected the lake quite a bit around. Everybody knows our area is kind of dominated by agriculture, and that is true. That does have an effect on the land, because anything that we do to kind of disturb the land can have an effect to alter the water. And without a living root system and a ground cover, that kind of can give it a more of a fast push for the sediment to be transported either by the water, the wind, in the atmosphere. We kind of thought it was interesting that the forest or protection or just grass protection fields wasn't given as high as of importance, because they're really connected to one another. Elkhorn Lake actually, for some lakes, has, if you look at online, does have a good amount of tree cover around the lakes, which is greatly helps out with slowing the impact of the raindrops down. Those root systems really hold in the surface. This here is just, I know I've shown before, a water quality trend line from data for Elkhorn Lake, and each one of these little dots here is an actual sample. So if you were a volunteer sampler to help take samples for a lake, this is where they come from. And a long-term trend line is obviously the most ideal for really getting the best picture of what's going on. You can see the trend line for Elkhorn is looking pretty good, and is hopefully it will continue up here in the water clarity to get the greater depth for down the line. So I don't have all the history of the area. I don't have much, but I do have a couple pictures I'd like to show of just the lake. I think it'd be surprising. Kandiyohi County, most counties every 2 years since the middle of 2000s have kind of been doing some flyovers to just try to help record and get historical data of what changes within the landscapes and help use it for all their planning. This is a photo I have here of.
Can I ask a question on the last one?
Yep.
That I was looking at that trend. That's water clarity. We're actually going in the right direction. I thought it was getting worse, but it's moving in the right direction.
No, yep, because this is in feet here, so 0 feet and 20 feet. So the trend what you want is to go up. So these two samples taken were say a Secchi disc reading of over 20 feet is good, versus somewhere here like this one here, a Secchi disc of probably like 4 is not in the trend you want. So the actual trend line so far is looking like it's going up. It takes a little while for them to get all their data in, so we don't know what the next year can do, but there isn't really a big bounce. from this one, which is probably about 2006 or whatever, we're kind of missing here. It's kind of hard to know exactly what this is, but it's pretty much about level, or right now has been trending up the past couple of years, which is a very good trend to have. We'd like to see that. So, yeah. Any other questions up to this point? I know I've been kind of moving fast. I've kind of had a lot of just pictures and slides up without explaining all of it. Hopefully some of the images are right, and I know it's not new rocket science for everybody. So I'll get back to this picture. This is a picture of Elkhorn Lake, if you can see. This is from 1938. So a long time ago. With you all know, living around the area, this is a very dramatic, big difference than what we see today. This is still Highway 23 here. One big thing that is easy to notice is the actual lake shoreline from right now into the actual the bank line up here in the bank is very big. So I know John had mentioned before about wetlands in their natural cycle of being able to flood and then dry out, something like that. So over a time of a long time, the landscape will act on that and kind of reinforce itself. So when you do get that big flood or that big drawdown, there isn't a big dramatic shift with possible erosion or all the vegetation or trees will be flooded. And you can see the shoreline here is very different from where it is. Also, you can see here it's very differently. I don't know if you can see my cursor, is the kind of rearing pond and going off is pretty much, it's not even there. It is not even a picture that someone would imagine, obviously flying over in 1938 taking this, that they would not think that at one time that there would be a rearing pond area here. I have another picture here, and this one is from 1954. Sam, one thing I noticed right away, obviously there is not a lot of development. There still is very little development around here in the lake. The shoreline is very different from what I showed before, where it had that kind of the large buffer zone, we call it, of just vegetation, grass vegetation, not trees. It's pretty much gone. You can see here now actually more of the water leaving the area. It is unknown at this time. Obviously, it could just be a wet year. The other picture in 38 could have just been a drier year. But it is very different. So I'll go back to this one real quick. Just look at the shoreline and the vegetation around from the water line until the shore. Then come here. It is a very, very noticeable difference to it. It's too hard to say what the cause of it is with no data to back up. So
My grandpa used to say, like, in the late 30s in West Solomon, there'd be a point in time where you could walk. There's a very large island out there. You could walk on the ground out to that island because the water was down so much.
Yeah.
They would actually graze cattle out in the middle of the lake because it was a place that grass would actually grow. So for what that's worth.
No, it's true. I've seen there's another little lake wetland area west of the Middle Fork. It's just south of New London there. And in a 1938 picture, they actually had it. They could see how they dug and they had drains in there, and they're farming it for hay. And now today, you would never imagine that. It's the lines that they had dug to drain it are filled in, and the lake is bounced back up. But yeah, it's quite interesting looking over some historical photos sometimes. Okay, so 38. We'll just move real quick. Again, 1954. One more here. This is 1963. Again, now I mentioned we didn't know what was up between the 1938 and 1954 with the shoreline, looking very different. Here, this 1963 picture of the shoreline looks pretty similar to the 1954 one. Not knowing if there was anything put in here to help with that, anything else water influence into the area to coming in here. Obviously, you can still see the cutout in the rearing pond that was put in, I believe, by the Sportsman's Club. That's what I heard is still not in the picture, and there is still very little development in here. I don't know if any person around here right now, if you see where your house is, but yeah, there's still very few houses around here in 1963. Going to today, this is the picture of Kandiyohi today of the area, and it is again very different from both of the pictures. Mainly, you can see here in the area here where the rearing pond is, very unnoticeable. Like I say, even in all previous of the slide pictures, I think anybody flying over really wouldn't have, it would have not ever crossed their mind that this would be here today. So, and I do mention looking around, you can see there the tree cover around here is pretty good compared to a lot of lakes where you have pretty much, you know, Green Lake, I guess, is lots of lawns straight up, big lawns right up to the shore. That is not quite the same here. So this is obviously not of new information, everybody. This is a 2020 aerial photograph, I believe. The dam itself, I don't have a whole lot of information with the dam. That will be coming out with in April, along with all the rest of the hydrology study from Houston. It is owned by Kandiyohi County. The next inspection year is going to be in 2025. With that, I don't think that they spend a whole lot of time inspecting the dam. It is not really a dam of significance and importance to the state as far as electrical production or downstream harm of residents if something happens to it. So I didn't know. As far as any questions up to this point, I have a little bit I can bring up with the arsenic, just concept with that. Unless there's any questions at this point, I can bring them actually here. So I'll kind of just show this up here. So this is just a GIS that I've pulled up here. Some modeling programs that I help use to just try to get a layout analysis of land. We have lots of things I can here to try to do with programs to help predict areas of filtration. When we can rank these areas, can be ranked with percentage of how much water will flow into them, the types of soils and the type of nutrients that might come out of them, and we can kind of rank those, as well as even just giving a basic slope photography of the land in some digital elevation, which is weird that it doesn't really pick up the houses. This is something that we help to do if we really want to focus on an area. It's a really good tool to use to see everything without driving everywhere, to see you firsthand, to try to get some line of prediction of what's going on. But the real thing is really after we get an area, say we want to go look at this area here, is really just to go out and get a firsthand visual look of what's going on. Is what the computer is showing correct? And basically a lot of it is there information that a landowner has that they can give us? We may have some information in our field and a lot of experience with what we do sometimes, but it doesn't mean we know more than someone who's been living there for a couple of years. And it can really give a mention of, oh, this area really does flood a lot, or when the snow melts, you can see the water all drains down here. Firsthand experience and information is great. As far as being lake show owners and stewardists in the lake association you're in, information that you can provide to the district for anything of known importance you think you might have, does help. It doesn't always give us a solid clue of what may be happening, but it is very, very helpful in the long run. There's a lot going on, and there's the Middle Fork is a big area. So as far as this is kind of showing the boundary here. I'll kind of take this off. So the boundary here, right now in black, is what I showed previously before of the three main sections for the sub-watershed going into Elkhorn. So just because there is a boundary here does not mean that somehow some water 200 feet away is never going to flow in here. This is just kind of just a general estimation. Is it really close? It is really close. And a lot of times it's pretty spot on. This also goes to show that being on the outer boundary of the Middle Fork area, that if you can kind of see here, that water pretty much anywhere around here should not and most likely does not flow in across the borderline into the sub-watershed that will go into the Nest Lake. Watersheds are pretty much, I know I mentioned all water that flows in them concentrate in a certain spot. This is mostly true also for aquifers and underground water. It's not always exact. Every area obviously is a little bit different. So say, getting to the point here, if there was some sort of dump over here or someone was dumping a bunch of pollutants, we'll say arsenic, the chances that it would flow up topography land and into another watershed is highly unlikely. Underground obviously is kind of sometimes a game changer. It's hard to predict all that. Underground flow is a lot more difficult than seeing overland flow. So depending on where the sample for the well was taken in arsenic, it either most likely comes from somewhere up in these three areas, which there is some farmland, but it's not a whole lot of land for the lake size of what it is. And we mentioned before about watershed size to lake. Say if this area, these three sections here were 3 times as large, you'd have 3 times as much overland flow that will be concentrated into this lake, which is not. And the fact that there actually are quite a bit for this size of subsections of Gina and Thompson Lake and these wetlands, helping to filter out and trap out a lot of nutrients. It is also hard to say about a sample from arsenic. I think the legal limit they dropped, it used to be 50 parts per million, now it's 10. By having one sample, it's kind of hard to say of what may be going on around the area. It's kind of like going out the lake and dropping 1 second disc depth and saying, oh, I'm at 20 feet. This lake is always at 20 feet for clarity. Well, that's not always true with one sample. You kind of need more to get a trend line or to just kind of know more about what's going on in the area.
Andy, this
Yep.
is Mary Williamson. We live on the south side there.
Around here?
Just a little bit to the left of your arrow there, right in there. Our arsenic level was 25, and I think Cindy has had arsenic checked on the north part. She's up in the lagoon.
Right.
Are you,
We did.
Cindy?
You're
Really?
correct. We did just a week or so ago.
Okay.
Tested, 14 or 15, somewhere in there, I think. And also just right there on the lake, I know Hotz's were high on arsenic as well. And Jared,
Interesting.
didn't you say, is Jared still here? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still here. I haven't tested it yet. I'm going to. We were high on radon.
We were right on the borderline there.
Ross, are you on here? Did you have your arsenic tested? I don't know if he's still on.
We did. We were at 15.
Okay. And they're more, how would you describe where you are? South,
We're
east a little bit?
Yep, we're just straight in from 71st.
There are sources of arsenic where I looked up in quite a bit of things. They've kind of been banned in most things as far as, you know, pesticides and herbicides and fertilizers. Another main source of it is they used to have it, besides some medical stuff, which I don't recommend if there is any around here, is in treated wood. It's kind of hard to say. Everybody has treated wood somewhere at their house. I doubt that's the big source of it. Have you tried going to the Kandiyohi Health? I would try contacting to them about to see if they've known of anything. I don't know. You could try looking to see if there's some sort of old dumps or something in the area. I'm not too sure of that. Looking at the 1938, 54, and 63 photos, you really don't see too much activity with anything. With that, do you know, I mean, how long have you been testing for the arsenic and getting this? Is a new thing this year?
We just had a test when our water softener went out here about a week ago.
We just tested too because we were replacing our water softener.
Huh. It's not really an area of expertise for me for arsenic and in private wells. Sorry, I can't be too much of assistance with you, just without explaining the actual flow of water to reaching that way. And outside of the watershed area, if you can see my cursor down here, is pretty unlikely. I think anything would be introduced into your watershed area. And this area here is somewhere you could try contacting, without saying, you know, there are only a couple people that live around the area, but I mean, outside of the actual just the lake. But yeah, I guess Kandiyohi County Health would probably be, since they do water testing mainly for nitrates, for I think any infant under 2 is recommended to get tested for well water. So they would probably have definitely the most information on that, and possibly like levels for a trend line if there is more data samples that were taken for that.
Hey, Mary Beth, John here. Maybe it's something we can post on our Facebook page or communicate out again. And did you guys have some cause and effect? What did you do to help reduce that level? Was there?
We're doing some, we've tore out some ceiling and replumbing. We're putting in reverse osmosis to our drinking water and our, you know, fridge and ice cube mixers. So.
And maybe that's just, you know, it's an example. Reverse osmosis could be one solution, blah, blah, blah. But I think just communicating it out and getting more tests might get us some more feedback on how widespread that is. I haven't done one, so I'm interested in doing one myself. So.
Yeah, that is even, I guess, you know, when people are on the area that aren't immediately around Elkhorn, start asking around other people. I would even outside here, possibly something like that. Something I would look into. Because, like I say, it's not really an area of expertise that I've ever been in. I was looking it up the other day, but.
Andy, if people get results, would it be helpful to know what parts of the lake it's higher in? I mean, would that be helpful to you?
That would definitely be good information to have. Yeah.
Maybe we can gather that information if people get their testing and they can just email.
If you start seeing a trend of concentration around one area, yeah, that would be, I mean, that would give you an idea of something to go further investigate, for sure.
Thank you.
Yep. I guess as we're kind of winding down on time, I'm any more questions, you know, bring them up. I guess I kind of conclude of, you know, everything we do on the landscape does kind of reflect it in the water over time. Sometimes it will take many years until we'll notice an effect on it, and then after that it can take many more years and lots of in times funds to try to remedy a situation. Having eyes and ears out there is great for the Watershed District. We greatly appreciate feedback and just kind of helping to show us what's going on, because it's a large area and it's hard to get everywhere. John or Russ, I didn't know if you have anything to chime in or any other questions for them.
I think Russ had to drop off, but
No, I just want to say thank you all for, well, I remember it's been 2 years, a little over 2 years or so, when I was meeting with you guys, getting the Lake Association sort of up and running again, and to see you guys all coming together and asking interesting questions and really being proactive. It's great to see. So I just want to congratulate you guys all on that and say thank you.
you guys have all been great partners too. I appreciate the input and all your time here, and a couple hours to ask for you guys to put all this stuff together is pretty important, and a lot of good information there. Hopefully we can get it shared around.
Sure, and Jared and Cindy, I'll be reaching out to you guys, and it goes for everybody else. If there's anything that we can help with, we're here to help you guys, and our doors aren't open right now, but you can get a hold of us.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody's time.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good
Thank
night.
you. Can the rest of the lake members stay on here for a minute, just to
Sure.
discuss something real quick? Did you guys see on Facebook that Jim Nelson fell into a spearing hole out on our lake on Friday? Very scary, and I don't know, is that something that they should be marking when they go spearing? I don't know.
Yeah, tradition.